The autumn wind carried dust and dead leaves across the platform of Cedar Junction Station, a weathered wooden structure that served as the last stop before the vast emptiness of the Wyoming Territory. Anna Whitmore sat on the same bench where she'd spent the past 3 days, her traveling dress now wrinkled and dusty, her once neat auburn hair loosened from its pins. She clutched a crumpled telegram in her gloved hands, though she'd memorized every word. Regret to inform you, Mr. James Sullivan deceased. Cholera outbreak. Property sold for debts. 23 words that had destroyed her future. The man who'd promised her a new life through their correspondence, who'd sent her the train fare and his photograph, was gone before she'd even arrived. The station master, Ezra Holloway, emerged from his office for what must have been the 10th time that day. His weathered face showed concern mixed with growing impatience. "Miss Whitmore," he began, clearing his throat. "The evening train's due in 2 hours. You certain there's no one I can wire for you? Family back east, perhaps?" Anna straightened her spine, a gesture of pride that cost her dearly. "I've already explained, Mr. Holloway. There's no one." The words came out steadier than she felt. No family. Her parents dead these 5 years, her brother lost in the war. No home. She'd sold everything to make this journey, believing in the promise of a marriage and a fresh start. "Well, now, that's a predicament," Ezra muttered, shifting his weight. "Station's no place for a lady to be lingering. Folk are starting to talk." Indeed they were. Anna had noticed the pointed looks from the townspeople who passed through. Women clutching their shawls tighter, whispering behind gloved hands. Men stealing curious glances before their wives yanked them along. She was becoming a spectacle, a cautionary tale about women who traveled alone to meet strangers. "I have $3.40, Anna said quietly. "How far will that take me?" "Back east. Not even to Nebraska. West. Might get you to the next settlement, but there's nothing there but miners and cattle drives." Ezra rubbed his graying whiskers. "Miss, I run an honest station, but I can't have you sleeping on my benches much longer. The railroad company—" "I understand," Anna interrupted, rising to her feet. The world swayed slightly. She'd been rationing her last bit of bread and had eaten nothing since yesterday morning. I'll find other arrangements." But what arrangements? The hotel wanted $2 a night, money she couldn't spare. The boarding house had made it clear they didn't take in women of uncertain circumstances. She'd already been turned away from the general store when she'd inquired about work. Mrs. Henderson proclaiming they had no need for help, though the "Help Wanted" sign remained in the window. Anna walked to the edge of the platform, gazing out at the frontier town of Cedar Junction. It was larger than some settlements, boasting a main street with a dozen establishments, a church with a whitewashed steeple, and houses spreading out like scattered seeds on the prairie. But for all its signs of civilization, it might as well have been the moon for how foreign and unwelcoming it felt. "Miss Whitmore?" A young voice startled her. Tommy Patterson, the boy who helped at the station, stood nearby with a tin cup. "Ma sent me with some coffee. She says, you looked poorly." Anna accepted the cup gratefully, wrapping her cold fingers around its warmth. "Thank your mother for me, Tommy." The boy lingered, kicking at a loose board. "Is it true what they're saying? That you came to marry a dead man?" "Thomas Patterson." Ezra's sharp voice cut through the air. "You get on home before I tan your hide." The boy scurried off, but his question hung in the air like smoke. Yes, Anna thought bitterly. She'd come to marry a dead man. She'd believed the letters, the promises of a good life, a small ranch, and honest work. James Sullivan had seemed kind in his words, respectful in his intentions. She'd thought herself fortunate when his advertisement in the Philadelphia paper had led to their correspondence. "Spinster seeking fresh start," she'd written. At 28, she was already considered past prime marrying age, especially with no dowry to speak of. The war had taken so many men, leaving women like her with few prospects. When James had proposed, offering to pay her passage, it seemed like Providence itself. Now Providence had played a cruel joke. As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Anna watched the townspeople heading home to their suppers, their warm fires, their families. Through lit windows, she could see women setting tables, children being gathered, Men washing the day's dust from their faces. The ordinary rituals of home, how she'd taken them for granted once. "Where will you go?" Ezra asked, returning to stand beside her. His voice had softened, carrying a note of genuine concern. Anna set down the empty coffee cup, smoothing her skirts with trembling hands. "I don't know," she admitted, the first crack appearing in her carefully maintained composure. "I truly don't know." The station master sighed heavily. There's a place on the edge of town, Rosalie's establishment. She sometimes takes in girls who are in difficult circumstances." Anna's cheeks flamed. She knew exactly what kind of establishment he meant. "I haven't fallen that far, Mr. Holloway." No, Ezra hurried to clarify, his own face reddening. "I didn't mean Rosalie's got a good heart. She might have washing work or cooking. Honest work, miss, but—" He hesitated. "It's not a proper place for a lady." What was proper anymore, Anna wondered. Was it proper to sit at a train station for 3 days? Was it proper to beg for work? Was it proper to slowly starve while maintaining one's dignity? "I'll consider it," she said quietly, though the words tasted like ash. The whistle of the evening train sounded in the distance, a lonely wail that echoed across the prairie. Soon the platform would fill with passengers, people with destinations, purposes, homes waiting for them. And she would still be here, a woman caught between worlds, too proper for the only work available, too poor for propriety to matter. As the train pulled in with a great belching of steam and smoke, Anna retreated to her bench, making herself small, invisible. She watched families reunite, watched men of business stride purposefully toward town, watched the mail bags being unloaded, perhaps carrying letters like the ones that had brought her here, full of promises that might prove just as empty. When the platform cleared again, Ezra approached one last time. "Miss Whitmore, I'm sorry, but come morning." "I understand," Anna said. "Come morning, I'll be gone." Where, she didn't know, but she had one more night to figure it out. One more night before she had to choose between starvation and surrender, between maintaining her dignity and simply surviving. As darkness fell over Cedar Junction, Anna Whitmore pulled her thin shawl tighter and prepared to face her third night at the station, knowing it would be her last. John Carver noticed her the first time when he'd come to collect a shipment of fencing wire. A woman sitting alone at the station, back straight as a church pew, hands folded properly in her lap. He'd thought nothing of it. People waited for trains every day. The second time, 2 days later, when he'd returned to send a telegram about cattle prices, she was still there. Same bench, same posture, though her dress showed more dust and her face had taken on a hollow quality that spoke of missed meals. That's when he'd asked Ezra about her. "Sad case," the station master had said, shaking his head. "Came to marry James Sullivan, but the poor soul died before she arrived. No money to go back, no place to go forward." John had left that day with an uneasy feeling in his chest, the kind he got when a storm was brewing on the horizon. He knew what it was like to be alone, to have the ground fall away beneath your feet. Martha had been gone 2 years now, taken by pneumonia during that brutal winter, leaving him with a 5-year-old son and a ranch that felt more like a tomb than a home. Now, on the third day, he stood just inside the station door, watching Anna Whitmore try to maintain her dignity while the world crumbled around her. She didn't know he was there. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon, as if willing a solution to appear from the endless prairie grass. "You planning to stand there all day, Carver?" Ezra's voice startled him. John stepped fully into the station, removing his hat. "Just thinking." "Well, think fast. I've got to clear her out by morning. Railroad supervisor's coming through and they won't look kindly on me turning the platform into a charity house." Through the window, John could see Tommy Patterson's mother and another woman whispering near the water pump, casting disapproving glances toward the station. He knew what they were saying, knew how quickly a woman's reputation could be destroyed by circumstances beyond her control. Martha had taught him that, defending their hired girl when the town gossips had tried to ruin her over a misunderstanding. She asked about work, John found himself asking. Every place in town. Might as well have scarlet fever for how quick they turned her away. Ezra spat tobacco juice into a brass spittoon. "Pride's all she's got left, and that won't fill an empty stomach." John thought about his own empty house, about young Samuel asking again this morning why breakfast was burnt, why his clothes were never mended properly, why the house didn't smell like flowers anymore. He thought about the ledgers piling up because he couldn't manage the ranch and the household both. He thought about a lot of things he probably shouldn't. I might have work, he heard himself say. Ezra's eyebrows shot up. That's so? Temporary, just until she gets her feet under her. John was already regretting speaking, but the words kept coming. Need help with the house, cooking, looking after Samuel when I'm out with the cattle. John Carver, you know what people will say. People say a lot of things. John's voice carried an edge. They said Martha married beneath her. They said I'd lose the ranch after she died. Last I checked, their opinions didn't pay my bills or raise my son. Ezra studied him for a long moment. You're a good man, John. But this could get complicated. Complicated. Everything in life was complicated when you looked too close. Simple was watching a woman waste away because propriety demanded it. Simple was letting his son grow up without anyone to teach him his letters or mend his torn breeches. Simple was dying alone someday because he'd been too afraid of what people might whisper. Send her out, John said. I'll talk to her. He stepped onto the platform, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the weathered boards. Anna didn't look up as he approached, though he saw her shoulders tense slightly. Miss Whitmore? Now she turned, and he was struck by her eyes, gray as winter storm clouds, but still holding a spark of something unbroken. Yes? Name's John Carver. I have a ranch about 3 miles north of town. He found himself turning his hat in his hands like a schoolboy. I heard about your situation. Her chin lifted slightly. I imagine everyone has. I have a proposition. Honest work, nothing improper. He rushed to clarify. I need help with my house, someone to cook and clean, look after my boy when I'm working. Room and board plus wages. She studied him carefully, and he knew she was measuring him against every fear, every warning her mother had probably given her about men and their intentions. Why? It was a fair question. Because I need help. Because you need work. Because... He paused, then decided on honesty. Because I know what it's like to have your world turned upside down and feel like you're drowning in the aftermath. You lost someone. It wasn't a question. My wife, 2 years ago. The words still felt strange in his mouth. Left me with a 5-year-old son who asks questions I can't answer and needs things I don't know how to give. Anna was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the town where curtains twitched and tongues wagged. People will talk? They already are. It could ruin your reputation. My reputation won't cook supper or teach my son his numbers. A ghost of a smile touched her lips, the first he'd seen. You're very practical, Mr. Carver. Ranch life tends to beat the romance out of a man. Though that wasn't entirely true. There was something about the way the light caught in her hair, something about the straight line of her spine that spoke of strength despite everything. I have conditions, she said suddenly. I'm listening. I'll need my own room with a lock. I'll want Sundays for church and half a day off each week. And I'll need 2 weeks' wages in advance, not because I plan to run, but because I need things. She gestured vaguely at her travel-worn dress. Fair enough. He mentally calculated what he could spare. Money was tight, but not as tight as it would be if he lost more cattle because he was trying to do everything himself. When can you start? When do you need me? Yesterday. The admission came with a rueful smile. But tomorrow will do. She stood then, and he realized she was taller than he'd expected, her head coming nearly to his shoulder. There was grace in her movements despite the exhaustion he could read in every line of her body. I accept your offer, Mr. Carver, but I want it understood. I'm your housekeeper, nothing more. I won't be a replacement for your wife or a mother to your son. I'm an employee. Understood. Though even as he agreed, he wondered if lines drawn in prairie dust ever held against the wind. They shook hands, her grip surprisingly firm through her worn gloves. As they stood there on the platform, the evening light painting everything golden, John felt something shift in his chest. Not hope exactly, but the possibility of it. I'll come for you in the morning, he said. 8 o'clock. I'll be ready. As he walked back through the station, Ezra gave him a knowing look. Complicated, the station master muttered. Most things worth doing are, John replied. Riding home, he tried not to think about what he'd just done. He'd hired a housekeeper, that was all. A practical arrangement for practical people, but he couldn't shake the image of her sitting on that bench, proud and alone, fighting a world that seemed determined to break her. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Tomorrow the town would talk, his son would ask questions, and Anna Whitmore would walk into a house still haunted by another woman's memory. But tonight, at least, she wouldn't have to face another night on a cold station bench, clinging to dignity while the world tried to strip it away. John Carver had learned many things in his 34 years. He'd learned that cattle could be contrary, weather could be cruel, and death could come calling when you least expected it. But as he rode toward his empty house, he wondered if he was about to learn something else entirely. That sometimes the most dangerous storms were the ones that started with a single act of kindness. The wagon ride to the Carver ranch passed mostly in silence, broken only by the creak of wheels and the occasional snort from the horses. Anna sat beside John on the bench, her single carpetbag at her feet, trying not to notice how the townspeople stopped to stare as they passed. She kept her eyes fixed on the horizon, where the mountains rose like purple shadows against the morning sky. That's it, John said finally, gesturing with his chin toward a collection of buildings nestled in a valley. The Double C Ranch. Anna's first impression was of sturdy practicality. A 2-story frame house with a wraparound porch, a large barn, several outbuildings, and fences stretching as far as she could see. Everything was well maintained, but lacking the small touches that spoke of a woman's presence. No flowers beside the porch, no curtains in the windows, no wash fluttering on a line. As they pulled up to the house, the front door burst open and a small boy tumbled out, all knees and elbows and uncombed sandy hair. "Pa, you're back. Did you bring—" Samuel Carver stopped short, his blue eyes widening at the sight of Anna. He took a step backward, suddenly shy. "Samuel, this is Miss Whitmore. She's going to be helping us with the house." John climbed down and lifted Anna's carpet bag. "Mind your manners, son." The boy continued to stare, his thumb creeping toward his mouth before he remembered himself and dropped his hand. "Hello, ma'am." "Hello, Samuel." Anna kept her voice gentle, recognizing the wariness in his eyes. She'd seen it before in children who had lost a parent, that mixture of longing and fear whenever a new adult entered their world. John led them inside, and Anna had to suppress a gasp. The house was clean enough, but it felt abandoned despite being lived in. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight streaming through bare windows. The furniture sat at rigid angles, as if afraid to relax. A layer of grime dulled surfaces that should have gleamed. Most telling were the small signs of a child trying to cope. A plate with dried food shoved behind a cushion, crayon marks on the wall half-heartedly scrubbed, toys scattered in corners like forgotten promises. Martha was sick for a long time before. John cleared his throat. Haven't had much chance to keep things up proper since. Anna could see more than he was saying. She could see it in the way certain chairs sat at precise angles, in the daguerreotype on the mantel of a pretty woman with kind eyes, in the china cabinet with its doors firmly closed as if preserving something sacred. This wasn't just a house missing a woman's touch. It was a shrine to grief, frozen in the moment of loss. "I'll show you your room," John said, already moving toward the stairs. Samuel trailed behind them, his bare feet pattering on the wooden floors. Anna noticed his shirt was buttoned wrong and his hair looked like birds had nested in it. When was the last time someone had properly looked after this child? The room John showed her was small but adequate. A narrow bed with a faded quilt, a dresser with a cracked mirror, a washstand, and a single chair by the window. Everything smelled of disuse. "It locks," John said, demonstrating the key. "Used to be the hired man's room, back when we could afford one. You'll find linens in the hall cupboard. Privy's out back, but there's a chamber pot under the bed." "It's fine," Anna said, and meant it. After 3 nights on a train station bench, it looked like paradise. "I'll leave you to settle in. Got work to see to." John paused at the door, seeming to want to say more, then simply added, Dinner's usually at 6, but we've been making do with whatever's handy. Kitchen's downstairs. Help yourself to anything." After he left, Anna sat on the bed, testing its firmness. Samuel had remained in the doorway, watching her with those two serious eyes. "Are you going to stay?" he asked suddenly. "For a while, yes. The last lady only stayed a week. Said we were hopeless." His matter-of-fact tone made it worse somehow. "Well," Anna said carefully, "I don't give up that easily." He considered this. "Can you make flapjacks?" "I can. With syrup. If you have syrup." "We might. Pa doesn't know where things are sometimes." Samuel edged a little closer. "Can you fix buttons?" Anna looked at his misaligned shirt. "Would you like me to fix yours now?" He nodded, then seemed to realize he'd shown too much eagerness and tried to look indifferent. "If you want." She patted the bed beside her. "Come here, then." As she worked on the buttons, Samuel stood still as a statue, barely breathing. When she finished, he looked down at the properly aligned shirt with something like wonder. "Ma used to do that," he whispered. "I'm sure she did it very well," Anna said gently. "She smelled nice, like flowers." His voice was so quiet she almost missed it. "You smell like train smoke." Despite everything, Anna found herself smiling. "Yes, I suppose I do. Perhaps once I've had a proper wash, I'll smell better." Samuel seemed to consider this acceptable and wandered off, leaving Anna to unpack her meager belonging. 2 dresses, both showing wear, undergarments mended so many times they were more thread than fabric, a Bible that had been her mother's, a small sewing kit, her mother's cameo brooch, the one thing of value she'd refused to sell. She changed into her work dress and made her way to the kitchen. What she found there made her roll up her sleeves in determination. Dishes piled in the dry sink, a stove that hadn't seen proper blacking in months, a pantry with supplies jumbled together, flour next to soap, coffee grounds spilled and left to scatter. The icebox held a pitcher of milk on the edge of souring, some eggs, and what might have once been vegetables. Through the window, she could see John in a distant corral, working with a horse. The morning sun caught on his light brown hair, and she noticed the way he moved, confident, capable, carrying himself like a man who knew his place in the world, even if that world had tilted off its axis. "You gonna cook something?" Anna turned to find Samuel had returned, hope naked on his small face. "I thought I might. Are you hungry? Pa made mush this morning. It was lumpy." Anna surveyed the disaster of the kitchen again. "Well then, let's see what we can do about lunch, shall we?" As she worked, cleaning as she went, Samuel shadowed her every move. He was full of information delivered in bursts. That was Pa's favorite cup. That drawer stuck unless you jiggled it just right. Ma's good dishes were in the cabinet they weren't supposed to touch. The cat's name was Whiskers, but he ran off last month. By the time John came in for lunch, Anna had managed to create order from chaos, at least in the kitchen. She'd made a simple meal, biscuits, fried eggs, and gravy from the pan drippings she'd found, along with coffee that didn't taste like it had been boiled with nails. John stopped in the doorway, his expression unreadable as he took in the clean surfaces, the organized counters, the table properly set. Samuel was already in his chair, bouncing slightly with anticipation. "Sit," Anna said, not quite meeting John's eyes. "It's nothing fancy." John sat slowly, as if afraid sudden movement might break whatever spell had transformed his kitchen. When he bit into a biscuit, his eyes closed briefly. These are fine biscuits, Miss Whitmore." "Anna," she said. "In the house, you might as well call me Anna." "Anna, then." He looked at her directly for the first time since they'd arrived. "And I'm John." It was a small thing, the exchange of given names. But in that kitchen, with Samuel already reaching for his 3rd biscuit and the windows thrown open to let in fresh air, it felt like the first tentative step toward something neither of them could quite name. After lunch, John returned to his work, and Anna tackled the rest of the house with Samuel as her eager, if not entirely helpful assistant. He showed her his treasures, a collection of unusual rocks, a bird's nest, the carved wooden horse his father had made. He also showed her the things he wasn't supposed to touch, his mother's sewing basket, still holding a half-finished shirt, and a music box that played a tinny waltz when wound. "Pa gets sad when it plays," Samuel confided, "so I don't wind it anymore." By evening, the house had begun to breathe again. Floors swept, surfaces dusted, windows cleaned to let in the last rays of sunset. It wasn't transformed. That would take time, but it no longer felt like a tomb. When John came in for supper, he stood in the doorway again, that same stunned expression on his face. The table was set properly, with a tablecloth Anna had found in a drawer. She'd managed to make a decent stew from the supplies on hand, and fresh bread was cooling on the counter. Thank you," he said simply. As they ate, Anna noticed how John watched Samuel chattering about his day, saw the way his shoulders gradually relaxed, heard the quiet sigh that escaped him when he settled back in his chair with coffee. This was what she'd agreed to: cooking, cleaning, mending, being useful, being needed. Not being a wife or mother, just a housekeeper earning her wages. But as Samuel laughed at something, the first real laugh she'd heard from him, and John's face softened in response, Anna felt the first stirring of something dangerous. It would be so easy to forget she was temporary here, to let herself believe in the illusion of belonging. But she'd believed in illusions before, and look where that had gotten her. Still, as she cleared the dishes and Samuel begged for just one more story before bed, Anna allowed herself this moment of peace. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Tonight, at least, she had a roof over her head, food in her stomach, and purpose in her hands. The empty house had begun to fill with life again, whether any of them were ready for it or not. The first week passed in a blur of activity. Anna threw herself into the work with a fervor that surprised even her, scrubbing floors until they gleamed, beating rugs until dust clouds no longer emerged, organizing cupboards that had descended into chaos. She mended Samuel's clothes, taught him to tie his boots properly, and instituted a daily routine of face washing and hair combing that he submitted to with only minor protests. John watched it all with a mixture of gratitude and unease. She could see it in the way he hesitated at doorways, as if asking permission to enter his own rooms. The way he started to speak sometimes at dinner, then thought better of it. The way he looked at Samuel's clean face and pressed clothes with something like pain flickering behind his eyes. It was the second Sunday when the real challenges began. "Time for church," Anna announced, already dressed in her better dress, though better was relative when both showed signs of hardware. Samuel looked up from where he was playing with wooden soldiers on the floor. "We don't go to church anymore." "Well, we're going today." Anna kept her voice pleasant but firm. She'd spent a week establishing order in this house. She wouldn't abandon it now. John appeared in the doorway, still in his work clothes. "Anna, you don't need to." "I do need to." She met his eyes steadily. "It was part of our agreement. Sundays for church." "I meant you could go, not that you had to take." "A boy needs church," Anna interrupted. "And frankly, so does his father." Something flashed in John's eyes. Anger, perhaps, or pain. "The last time I was in that church was for my wife's funeral. I don't think God and I have much to say to each other anymore." "Then it's fortunate that church isn't just about talking to God," Anna replied, not backing down. "It's about community, about showing Samuel that we're part of something larger than this ranch. The community," John's laugh was bitter, "the same community that's probably counting the days until you prove to be exactly what they're whispering you are." The word stung, but Anna had faced worse. Yes, that community, because hiding away only gives them more to whisper about. They faced each other across the kitchen, the air charged with an emotion that went beyond employer and employee. Finally, John's shoulders slumped. "Fine, but don't expect a warm welcome." He was right, of course. The moment they entered the small white church, conversation stopped. Women who'd been chattering in the vestibule fell silent, their eyes tracking Anna's every move. She kept her chin high, her hand firm on Samuel's shoulder, and made her way to an empty pew near the back. John sat stiffly beside her, his jaw set like granite. Samuel fidgeted between them, unused to sitting still for so long. When the hymns began, Anna was surprised to hear John's voice, a pleasant baritone that knew every word without looking at the hymnal. Samuel tried to follow along, his small voice piping up at random intervals. Reverend Thompson's sermon was on the Good Samaritan, and Anna couldn't help but wonder if he'd chosen it deliberately. His eyes seemed to linger on their pew more than necessary when he spoke of helping those in need without judgment. After the service, Anna steeled herself for the gauntlet of leaving. Sure enough, Mrs. Henderson from the general store planted herself directly in their path. "Mr. Carver," she said, her voice dripping false sweetness. "How nice to see you in church again. And with your new housekeeper, Mrs. Henderson." John's tone could have frozen water. The woman's attention turned to Anna, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. "Miss Whitmore, isn't it? We heard about your unfortunate circumstances. How providential that Mr. Carver needed help just when you needed shelter." Before Anna could respond, a younger woman approached. Pretty, blonde, with the confident air of someone used to getting her way. "John," she said, completely ignoring Anna, "I've been meaning to bring you another apple pie. I know how much you enjoyed the last one." "Miss Crawford." John's politeness was painful to witness. "That's kind, but unnecessary. Anna, Miss Whitmore, has the kitchen well in hand." Eliza Crawford's perfect smile faltered slightly. Her gaze flicked to Anna, taking in the worn dress, the careful mending, the lack of wedding ring. "I see. Well, the offer stands. A bachelor needs all the help he can get. I'm not—" John started, then stopped. Because what was he? Not a bachelor, not really. A widower, a father, a man caught between past and present. Anna felt Samuel's small hand slip into hers. "Can we go home now?" he whispered. Home, such a simple word for such a complicated concept. The rest of the week brought more challenges. The whispers followed them everywhere. To the general store, where Anna had to argue for fair prices. To the post office, where letters were handed over with knowing looks. Even to the schoolhouse, where she'd taken Samuel to ensure he was properly enrolled for the fall term. "That's the one staying out at the Carver place?" she heard one woman whisper to another as she selected fabric for new shirts for Samuel. "Bold as brass, shopping like she belongs here." Anna's hands trembled slightly as she counted out coins, but she completed her purchase with dignity. What else could she do? Samuel needed clothes that fit. John needed shirts that weren't held together by prayers and old thread. The house needed dozens of small things to make it functional again. It was Thursday when things came to a head. Anna was in the side garden, trying to coax life back into Martha's abandoned vegetable plot, when she heard horses approaching. 3 women from town, led by Mrs. Henderson, rode up to the house like avenging angels. "Miss Whitmore," Mrs. Henderson called out, not bothering to dismount. "A word, if you please." Anna stood slowly, brushing dirt from her apron. She was conscious of how she must look, sweaty, dirt-streaked, her hair escaping from its pins. "Ladies, we've come on a Christian mission," Mrs. Henderson announced, "to offer you guidance in your current situation." "How kind," Anna said dryly. "It's unseemly," one of the other women burst out. "A young woman, unmarried, living in the same house with a man. What kind of example is that for the boy? A better example than a child trying to raise himself while his father works himself to death?" Anna shot back, her patience finally fraying. "I'm a housekeeper, nothing more. I cook, I clean, I ensure Samuel gets to school with matching socks and a full stomach. If you find that scandalous, perhaps you should examine your own minds." Mrs. Henderson's face flushed. "How dare you? How dare I what? Work for honest wages, care for a motherless child, refuse to starve quietly at the train station to spare your delicate sensibilities? Ladies!" John's voice cut through the heated exchange. He'd appeared from the barn, his expression thunderous. "I believe you've overstayed your welcome." "John, we're only thinking of your reputation," Mrs. Henderson began. "My reputation?" John laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Where was this concern for my reputation when I was burning supper every night, when Samuel went to school with his clothes on backward? When I was so exhausted I nearly lost a finger to a saw blade because I couldn't keep my eyes open?" He moved to stand beside Anna, not touching but close enough that his intention was clear. "Miss Whitmore is in my employ. She has brought order to my home and care to my son. If you have nothing better to do than spread poison about a good woman trying to make an honest living, then I pity you. Now get off my land." The women left in a flurry of offended dignity, and muttered threats about consequences. Anna stood frozen, dirty hands clenched at her sides, fighting back tears she refused to shed. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I've brought trouble to your door." "No," John's voice was firm. "They brought trouble to mine. You brought—" He paused, seeming to search for words. "You brought life back to this place. Don't let them make you think otherwise." That evening, dinner was a quiet affair. Samuel seemed to sense the tension, eating without his usual chatter. As Anna cleared the dishes, she made a decision. "I should go," she said. "Find somewhere else. I have some wages saved now." "No." Samuel's fork clattered to his plate. "You promised you don't give up easy." "Samuel," John began. "No!" The boy's face was red, tears threatening. "Everyone leaves. Mama left, and Mrs. Potts left, and Whiskers left, and now Anna wants to leave too." "I don't want to leave," Anna said softly, kneeling beside his chair. "But sometimes we have to do things we don't want to protect the people we care about." "That's stupid," Samuel declared with 5-year-old certainty. "If you care about someone, you stay." From the mouths of babes, Anna thought. She looked up to find John watching them, his expression unreadable. "The boy's right," he said finally. "If you care about someone, you stay. Question is, Anna, do you care about us enough to weather what comes next?" It was more than a question about employment. They both knew it. And as Anna looked from John's steady gaze to Samuel's tearful hope, she realized she'd already crossed a line she'd sworn not to cross. Somewhere between mending shirts and making biscuits, between stern words and gentle touches, she'd started caring about these two broken hearts trying to heal. "I'll stay," she said. "But we need to be more careful. Perhaps I should take my meals separately, or—" "No," John interrupted. "We're not changing how we live to suit narrow minds. Let them talk. They'll talk anyway." That night, as Anna prepared for bed in her small room, she heard a soft knock. Opening the door, she found Samuel in his nightshirt, clutching something behind his back. "Pa said I could give you this," he said, producing a small potted plant. "It's from Mama's garden. Pa kept it alive, but it hasn't flowered since. Maybe you can make it bloom again." Anna accepted the plant, her throat tight. "I'll try my very best." As the boy padded back to his room, Anna set the plant on her windowsill. It was just a scraggly thing, more hope than certainty. But then again, so was she. So were they all. 3 souls trying to build something new from the ashes of loss, while the world watched and whispered and waited for them to fail. The afternoon was unseasonably warm for late September when John suggested Anna learn to ride. She'd been at the ranch for nearly 2 months now, and the distance to town was becoming a problem when she needed supplies. "I've never been on a horse," Anna admitted, eyeing the gentle mare John had brought to the corral with deep suspicion. "Buttercup's as docile as they come," John assured her. "Samuel learned on her." "I can show you," Samuel piped up from his perch on the fence rail. "It's easy." Anna smoothed her skirts nervously. She'd changed into her older dress, but riding astride would be improper, and she had no riding habit. "Perhaps this isn't—" "Here." John produced a divided skirt from behind his back. It was Martha's. No sense in it gathering dust when it could be useful. Anna took the garment with careful hands. It felt strange to wear another woman's clothes, especially knowing that woman had been everything Anna was not. Loved, legitimate, belonging. But practicality won over sentiment, as it always did these days. When she returned from changing, John's expression shifted to something she couldn't quite read. "It fits well enough," he said gruffly. "Now, first thing is not to show fear. Horses sense it." "Wonderful. I'm already failing." John's laugh was unexpected, rich and warm. "You faced down Mrs. Henderson and her harpies. Buttercup should be easy after that." He helped her mount, his hands steady at her waist, and Anna tried not to notice how her heart jumped at the contact. It was merely assistance, nothing more. The same as when their fingers brushed passing dishes, or when he steadied her on the ladder while she cleaned windows. Purely practical touches that somehow left her breathless. "Hold the reins like this," John instructed, his larger hands covering hers to demonstrate. Gentle but firm. Like most things in life, it's about finding the balance. Anna concentrated on the instructions, not on the warmth of him standing so close. Not on the way, the afternoon sun caught gold threads in his brown hair. She focused on the horse, the reins, the careful shift of weight he was explaining. "You're thinking too hard," John said. "Riding's like dancing. You have to feel the rhythm." "I'm not much of a dancer either," Anna confessed. "No? Well, maybe we'll have to fix that too." The words hung between them, weighted with possibilities neither acknowledged. Samuel's chatter broke the moment. "Make her walk, Anna. Just squeeze with your knees." To her amazement, Buttercup responded, moving forward in a sedate walk. Anna clutched the saddle horn, but after a few circuits of the corral, she began to relax. "You're a natural," John said, and there was something in his voice that made her look down at him. He was watching her with an expression she'd caught more frequently lately, soft and wondering, as if she were a puzzle he was trying to solve. "Can we show her the creek, Pa?" Samuel asked. "She hasn't seen the pretty spot yet." John hesitated. The creek was a good distance from the house, a place he'd taken Martha when they were courting. Going there with Anna felt like crossing another invisible line. But Samuel was already opening the gate, and Anna was looking at him with those storm-gray eyes, waiting. "All right," he conceded. "But we go slow." They made an odd procession, John on his stallion, Anna on Buttercup, and Samuel on his pony that was more attitude than size. The path wound through stands of cottonwood and aspen, their leaves just beginning to turn gold. Anna's initial fear gave way to wonder as she grew more comfortable in the saddle. "It's beautiful," she breathed, looking around at the landscape she'd only seen from the house windows. "So different from Philadelphia." "You miss it? The city?" John asked. "I miss—" Anna paused, considering. "I miss knowing where I fit. In the city, even as a spinster with diminished prospects, I had a place. Here, I'm neither fish nor fowl. Not quite servant, not quite family, not quite respectable woman." "You're Anna," Samuel said simply, as if that explained everything. "You make the best biscuits, and you fixed my lucky marble shooter, and you smell nice now." "High praise indeed," Anna laughed, but John saw the shimmer of tears she blinked away. The creek, when they reached it, was worth the ride. Clear water burbled over smooth stones, and ancient willows trailed their branches like gentle fingers. Samuel immediately dismounted to hunt for good skipping stones, leaving John to help Anna down. She slid from the saddle into his steadying arms, and for a moment they stood frozen, her hands on his shoulders, his at her waist. This close, he could see the faint freckles across her nose, the way her pulse fluttered at her throat. "John," she whispered, and he didn't know if it was warning or invitation. "Pa, Anna, look what I found." Samuel's voice shattered the moment. He came running with a pretty piece of quartz, and they stepped apart quickly, both breathing as if they'd run a race. They sat by the creek while Samuel played, careful to maintain proper distance, but awareness hummed between them like telegraph wires. "Martha loved this spot," John said suddenly. "I haven't been back since—" "You don't have to—" "No, I want to." He picked up a stick, drawing patterns in the dirt. "For 2 years I've felt frozen, going through motions, keeping things running but not really living. Then you showed up on that platform, proud as a queen despite everything, and something started thawing." Anna's hands twisted in her lap. "John, we agreed—" "I know what we agreed." His voice was rough, but agreements made in daylight sometimes look different by firelight. "I see you with Samuel, patient when he's difficult, gentle when he's sad. I see you making our house a home again, not trying to replace what was, but creating something new. I see you, Anna, and I—" "Don't!" She stood abruptly, wrapping her arms around herself. "Please don't say it. I can't bear it." "Why?" He stood too, facing her. "Because of what people say? Because you came here for another man? Because—" "Because I've learned not to trust hope." The words burst out of her. "Because every time I've believed in something, my parents' love, my brother's return from war, James's promises, it's been taken away. Because I care too much already, and if I let myself care more—" She turned away, but John caught her arm gently. "Anna, look at me." When she did, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I'm terrified," she admitted, "of wanting this. Of wanting you and Samuel and Sunday dinners and teaching him his letters and watching him grow and—" She stopped, pressing her hand to her mouth. Of wanting a family, John finished softly. I know. I'm terrified too. But maybe that's all right. Maybe being scared means it matters. A splash and a wail interrupted them. Samuel had slipped on a wet rock and fallen into the shallow water. They rushed to him, John pulling him out while Anna checked for injuries. He was more shocked than hurt, dripping and indignant. The rock moved, he accused, as if personally betrayed. Rocks do that sometimes, Anna said, wrapping him in John's jacket. Just when you think you're standing firm, everything shifts under your feet. She was talking to Samuel, but her eyes met John's over the boy's wet head. Understanding passed between them, acknowledgement of feelings admitted, of lines crossed, of a future uncertain but no longer unthinkable. The ride back was quiet, Samuel nodding off against his father's back. As they neared the ranch, Anna spoke. What do we do now? Same as before, John said. You cook, you clean, you teach Samuel his letters. I work the ranch, fix what's broken, try to be a better father, and maybe, in the spaces between, we figure out what comes next. The town, we'll talk regardless. Let them. I'm tired of living for other people's opinions. That evening, as Anna tucked Samuel into bed, he caught her hand. Anna, are you going to marry Pa? The question she'd been dreading. Why do you ask that? Because Tommy Morrison said that's what happens when ladies live in houses with men. They get married or they get run out of town. Anna's heart ached for the innocents touched by gossip. Sometimes life is more complicated than what Tommy Morrison says. But do you love Pa? Such a simple question, such a complex answer. I care about you both very much. Samuel seemed to accept this, snuggling into his pillow. Good, because I love you, Anna. Is that okay? Anna smoothed his hair with trembling fingers. That's more than okay, sweetheart. That's wonderful. Downstairs, she found John sitting by the fire, staring into the flames. Without speaking, she sat in the chair across from him, picking up her mending. The silence was comfortable now, weighted with acknowledged truths. He asked if we were getting married, Anna said eventually. John's hand stilled on the harness he was repairing. What did you tell him? That life is complicated. That it is. He paused. Anna, I need you to know. What I feel, it's not about convenience or Samuel needing a mother or me needing help. It's... I know, she interrupted softly. I know. They sat in companionable silence as the fire burned low. Two people caught between past hurts and future hopes, between duty and desire, between what the world expected and what their hearts wanted. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. But inside, for now, there was warmth and peace and the quiet understanding that some things, once acknowledged, could never be taken back. The divided skirt hung on the back of Anna's door that night, a reminder that some boundaries, once crossed, opened up new territories entirely. And in her windowsill, Martha's plant showed the first tentative signs of new growth, reaching toward the light with fragile determination. The pressure had been building for weeks, like storm clouds on the horizon. The townspeople's whispers had grown bolder, their disapproval more pointed. It came to a head on a Tuesday afternoon when Reverend Thompson arrived at the ranch, his black coat dusty from the ride. Anna saw him from the kitchen window and knew immediately why he'd come. She dried her hands slowly, smoothing her apron, preparing herself for what was to come. John was out checking the far pastures, Samuel at school. She would face this alone. Reverend, she greeted him at the door, not inviting him in. Miss Whitmore. His expression was grave, but not unkind. I wonder if we might speak. If this is about... It's about what's best for everyone involved, he interrupted gently. May I come in? She stepped aside reluctantly. In the parlor, he declined her offer of coffee, sitting forward in his chair with his hat in his hands. I'll be direct, Miss Whitmore. The situation here has become untenable. The women of the congregation are insistent that something must be done. And what would they have done, Reverend? Should I return to the train station? Perhaps take up residence under a bridge? There are alternatives. The widow Jameson in Millbrook needs a companion. It would be respectable work, away from complications. You mean away from John and Samuel? The Reverend sighed. Miss Whitmore, you must understand. A young woman, unmarried, living with a widower. It sets a poor example. And the boy's becoming attached, which will only make things harder when arrangements change. When I'm run out of town, you mean? No one wants that, but neither can this situation continue indefinitely. Either you leave or... He paused meaningfully. Or the situation is remedied through marriage. Mr. Carver is a respected man, despite his recent isolation. A proper marriage would silence the gossips and provide stability for young Samuel. Anna stood abruptly, anger flashing in her eyes. A marriage of convenience to satisfy the town's sensibilities? How romantic. Romance has little to do with survival on the frontier, Miss Whitmore. Surely your own experience has taught you that. The blow landed as intended. Anna turned to the window, fighting for composure. What does John say about this? I haven't spoken to him yet. I thought perhaps you might be more reasonable, more understanding of the delicate position you're in. The position I'm in, Anna repeated softly. Yes, I understand it perfectly. I'm expected to be grateful for any offer, no matter how loveless, expected to trade one form of servitude for another, all to quiet wagging tongues. Marriage to John Carver would hardly be servitude. He's a good man. Yes, Anna agreed. He is, which is precisely why I won't trap him in a marriage born of obligation and propriety rather than genuine feeling. The Reverend stood, his patience clearly wearing thin. Then you'll leave? I'll speak with John. Whatever we decide will be our choice, not the town's. After he left, Anna sank into a chair, shaking. She knew this day would come, had been dreading it even as she'd allowed herself to grow comfortable here. The plant on her windowsill had bloomed last week, tiny white flowers that filled her room with sweet fragrance. She'd taken it as a sign of hope. Now it seemed more like a farewell gift. When John returned that evening, his face was grim. Reverend Thompson stopped by the North Field on his way back to town. Ah. Anna continued setting the table, her movements precise. Then you know. Anna, supper's ready. Samuel will be hungry after school. They maintained a facade of normalcy through the meal, but Samuel wasn't fooled. He watched them with worried eyes, pushing food around his plate. Are you fighting? He finally asked. No, sweetheart, Anna assured him. Just thinking about grown-up things. I hate grown-up things, Samuel declared. They make everyone sad. After he was in bed, John found Anna on the porch, wrapped in a shawl against the cool evening air. He sat beside her on the bench, careful not to touch. The Reverend made some good points, Anna said quietly. This situation isn't fair to any of us, especially Samuel. He's getting attached, and when I leave, when, Anna insisted, because we both know this can't continue. The pressure will only increase. Your customers will start going elsewhere. Samuel will be teased at school. Your reputation, hang my reputation. You don't mean that. This ranch is your life, Samuel's inheritance. You can't risk it for whatever this is. John was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. The Reverend suggested a solution. Yes, marriage. The word hung between them like a challenge. Anna wrapped her shawl tighter. A business arrangement, practical, sensible, loveless. Is that what it would be? The question made her look at him. In the dim light from the window, his face was all shadows and angles, but his eyes were intent on hers. John, don't... I'm asking you a question, Anna. If I asked you to marry me, not for the town, not for propriety, not even for Samuel, would it be loveless? Her throat felt tight. What we feel or don't feel doesn't matter if the foundation is wrong. I won't have you wake up one day resenting me because you were forced into something by gossip and pressure. And if I told you I've been thinking about it since before the Reverend's visit? Since that day by the creek. Since I watched you teach Samuel to write his letters with such patience. Since I found you crying over Martha's plant when you thought no one was looking. Determined to make it bloom again. John, he turned to face her fully. I'm not a man of pretty words, Anna. I'm not James Sullivan with his letters full of promises. I'm just a rancher with dirt under his nails and a son who needs raising and a house that's finally starting to feel like a home again. But I know what I feel, and it's not obligation. Anna's eyes filled with tears. I'm scared. I've been disappointed so many times. I came here with such hope and it all turned to ash. What if the creek floods? What if the cattle get sick? What if the wheat fails? John shook his head. We can't live on what ifs, Anna. Sometimes you have to plant the seed and trust it will grow. The Reverend said romance has little to do with frontier survival. The Reverend's been married to the same woman for 30 years. He's forgotten what it's like to be lonely, to have someone walk into your life and make you remember what it feels like to hope again. John reached out, taking her hand. I'm not offering you a fairy tale. I'm offering you a life, hard work, long days, probably more sorrow mixed with the joy, but I'm also offering you my heart, such as it is. Battered maybe, but yours if you want it. Anna looked down at their joined hands, his calloused and strong, hers showing the effects of months of hard work. And if I say yes, we marry quickly, quietly, and everyone says I trapped you? Let them say it. We'll know the truth. And what's the truth? John lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her palm. The truth is, I'm asking you to marry me because I can't imagine this house without you in it. Because Samuel loves you, and you love him. Because when I wake up in the morning, you're the first thing I think about. Because you've made us a family again. And I want to make it official in the eyes of God and man. John Carver, Anna said, her voice trembling. Are you proposing to me? I suppose I am, though I'm doing a poor job of it. Should I kneel? I think I'm supposed to kneel. Despite everything, Anna laughed, a watery sound, but genuine. Don't you dare. Your knees are bad enough from all that ranch work. Is that a yes? Anna studied his face, this good man who'd offered her shelter when she had none, who'd defended her against gossip, who'd trusted her with his son and his home and now his heart. She thought of all the reasons to say no, the rushed timing, the town's judgment, her own fears. Then she thought of Samuel's gap-toothed grin, of quiet evenings by the fire, of a house slowly coming back to life. It's a yes, she whispered. John's smile was like sunrise after a long night. He pulled her close, and she went willingly into his arms. It wasn't their first embrace. There'd been moments of comfort, of shared joy over Samuel's achievements, but it was the first time they allowed themselves to hold on without guilt or hesitation. We'll marry Sunday after church, John murmured against her hair. Quick and quiet, like you said. But not because we're ashamed, because what we have is ours, not theirs. Samuel will be thrilled. He's been asking when you're going to be his real mother. Oh, John. Fresh tears spilled over. I already love him like my own. I know. He knows too. We've been a family in all but name for weeks now. This just makes it official. They sat together on the porch as the stars came out, planning quietly. A simple ceremony, just them and Samuel and whatever witnesses the law required. Anna would wear her better dress with Martha's cameo at her throat, a touching of past and present. They'd face whatever came after together. No regrets? John asked as they finally stood to go inside. Only one, Anna said. I wish I could have met you differently. Wish I could have come to you freely without all the complications. But then you wouldn't be you, John pointed out. And I fell in love with the woman who sat on that train platform for 3 days rather than give up. The woman who faced down the town, gossips, and won over my son and made that stubborn plant bloom again. Our story might not be conventional, but it's ours. As Anna prepared for bed that night, her last night in the small room that had become her sanctuary, she looked at the blooming plant on her windowsill. Tomorrow she'd transplant it to the garden, where it could spread and grow in the sun. A fitting metaphor for her own transplantation, her own chance to put down roots and bloom where she'd been planted. The morning would bring challenges. The town would talk. But for tonight, Anna Whitmore, soon to be Anna Carver, allowed herself to believe in the possibility of happiness. Not the fairy tale she'd once imagined, but something better. A real love, earned through struggle, chosen despite obstacles, and all the more precious for being unexpected. The letter arrived on a Thursday, 2 days before the wedding. Anna was in the garden, transplanting Martha's flowering plant as she'd promised herself, when Samuel came running from the house. Anna, Pa says come quick. There's a man here. Her heart dropped. She knew, somehow, before she even saw the stranger standing in her kitchen. He was thin, well-dressed in an Eastern style that looked out of place against the rough wooden walls. His eyes, when they found hers, held a mixture of triumph and malice. "Hello, Anna," Theodore Blackwood said. "Surprised to see me?" John stood protectively near the door, his stance suggesting barely controlled anger. "Anna, this man says he knows you from Philadelphia." "We were acquainted," Anna managed, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. Theodore's smile was sharp as glass. "Acquainted? Is that what you call it? How modest you've become, my dear." "State your business and leave," John growled. "My business?" Theodore produced a letter from his coat with theatrical flair. "My business is truth, Mr. Carver. You see, when I heard through mutual acquaintances that our dear Anna had fled west to marry some rancher, I felt it my duty to warn the poor man what he was getting." "I know exactly what I'm getting," John said firmly. "A good woman who—" "A good woman?" Theodore laughed, the sound like breaking china. "Did she tell you why she really left Philadelphia? Did she mention the scandal? The married man whose affections she pursued? The wife who publicly denounced her as a homebreaker?" Anna sank into a chair, the weight of her past crashing down. "That's not what happened." "No." Theodore waved the letter. "I have here a statement from Mrs. Charles Worthington herself, detailing how you threw yourself at her husband, how you were found in compromising circumstances." "I was his children's governess," Anna burst out. "He cornered me in the library. When I refused his advances and threatened to tell his wife, he twisted the story, said I had pursued him, that he'd had to dismiss me for inappropriate behavior. His wife believed him, of course. The scandal followed me everywhere. No decent family would hire me after that." "A convenient tale," Theodore sneered. "But who would believe a desperate woman over a respected banker and his wife?" John moved then, placing himself between Theodore and Anna. "I would. Now get out of my house." "Not before I've had my say." Theodore's eyes glittered with something darker than mere malice. "You see, Anna, after you left, certain debts came to light. Debts your dear departed father owed to my family's business. Substantial debts that, legally, fall to his surviving daughter." Anna's face went white. "That's impossible. Father owed no money to—" "Oh, but he did. Borrowed to keep up appearances, to maintain your mother in the style she demanded. Nearly $800 with interest." Theodore pulled out another paper. "All perfectly legal, all properly documented. Of course, if you were to reconsider your rejection of my previous offer, perhaps arrangements could be made." "Your previous offer?" John's voice was dangerously quiet. Theodore's smile widened. "Oh, she didn't mention? I offered to make her my mistress, set her up properly, clear the family debts. But she chose to run instead, chasing fairy tales about mail-order marriages. And now here she is, about to trick another poor fool into—" The sound of John's fist connecting with Theodore's jaw was surprisingly satisfying. The man crumpled, blood spurting from his nose. "Get up," John ordered. "Get up and get out before I forget I'm a gentleman." Theodore struggled to his feet, holding a handkerchief to his bleeding nose. "You'll regret this, Carver. Both of you will. I'll ruin you. I'll make sure everyone from here to San Francisco knows exactly what kind of woman she is. You'll leave." Sheriff Morrison stood in the doorway, Samuel peering around him with wide eyes. "Heard there was a disturbance. This man bothering you, John?" "He was just leaving," John said. "Weren't you, Mr. Blackwood?" Theodore looked between them, calculating. Then his shoulders slumped in defeat. "This isn't over," he muttered, but he allowed the sheriff to escort him out. In the sudden silence, Anna sat frozen, staring at her hands. "It's true," she whispered. "Not what he said about Charles Worthington, but Theodore did offer to keep me. When I refused, when I chose to answer James's advertisement instead, he swore he'd make me sorry. Anna, I should have told you." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "About the scandal, about Theodore, about all of it, but I was so afraid you'd look at me differently, afraid you'd believe I was the kind of woman who could." John knelt beside her chair, taking her cold hands in his. "Look at me." When she finally met his eyes, she saw no judgment there, only concern and a steady warmth that made her tears fall faster. "Do you think so little of me?" he asked gently. That I'd believe the word of a man who travels hundreds of miles to destroy a woman's happiness, who tries to blackmail her into degradation. But the debts may or may not be real. Even if they are, they're not yours to bear. You're not responsible for your father's choices. He squeezed her hands. And even if you were, do you think I'd let you face them alone? We're about to promise for better or worse, Anna. This is just some of the worse coming early. The town will believe him. He'll spread his poison everywhere. Then we'll face it together. John pulled her to her feet, into his arms. I told you before, I'm tired of living for other people's opinions. But Samuel is standing right here, the boy interrupted, squirming past the sheriff who'd been trying to keep him outside. And I don't care what that mean man said. You're good, Anna, the best. And if people say bad things about you, I'll punch them just like Pa did. You will not, John and Anna said in unison, then looked at each other and almost smiled. Sheriff Morrison cleared his throat. For what it's worth, Miss Whitmore, that Blackwood fellow's been asking questions in town all morning, trying to dig up dirt, offering money for gossip. Most folks didn't take kindly to it. Mrs. Henderson might enjoy her whispered speculation, but she doesn't hold with outsiders coming in to make trouble. It was faint comfort, but comfort nonetheless. After the sheriff left, they sat together, all three of them, around the kitchen table. I should leave, Anna said quietly. Disappear before he can do more damage. You and Samuel don't deserve— Don't! John's voice was firm. Don't you dare run. Not now. Not when we're so close to being a real family. But— No buts. Samuel climbed into her lap, something he rarely did anymore, considering himself too big for such things. You promised you don't give up easy. You promised. Anna held him close, breathing in the little boy's scent of dirt and sunshine. I did promise, didn't I? Then it's settled, John said. We marry Sunday as planned. Let Theodore Blackwood do his worst. Let the town talk itself hoarse. We'll be too busy living our lives to notice. But that night, Anna couldn't sleep. She stood at her window, looking out at the vast prairie under the stars, and wondered if she was being selfish. John and Samuel had already lost so much. Did they deserve to have their lives tainted by her past? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Anna? John's voice through the door. I saw your light. She opened the door to find him in his nightshirt and trousers, looking as sleepless as she felt. I'm sorry, she began. No. He stepped into the room. Propriety be damned. No more apologies, no more guilt. Do you want to know what I thought when Blackwood was spewing his poison? Anna shook her head, afraid to hear. I thought how brave you must have been. 18 years old, facing down a powerful man's advances, choosing poverty and scandal over dishonor, running west with nothing but hope and determination. That takes courage, Anna. The kind of courage I want my son to learn. John, I'm not finished. He cradled her face in his hands. I thought how lucky I am that James Sullivan died before you could marry him. God forgive me, but it's true. Because it brought you here, to us, and I wouldn't trade that for all the respectability in the world. Anna broke then, sobbing against his chest while he held her. Years of fear and shame poured out in tears. John simply held on, murmuring comfort, until the storm passed. I love you, she whispered when she could speak again. I didn't mean to, tried not to, but I do. I know, he murmured back. I love you too, have for weeks now. And on Sunday, I'm going to stand before God and everybody and make it official. Theodore Blackwood be damned. They stood there in the lamplight, holding each other, while outside the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Storm coming, maybe. But the house was strong, built to withstand prairie weather. And what they were building together, this unexpected love, this chosen family, that was strong too. No more secrets, John asked. No more secrets, Anna promised. Then let's get some sleep. We have a wedding to prepare for. After he left, Anna returned to her window. The plant she'd transplanted that morning was out there in the garden, facing its first night in new soil. By morning, it might be wind-battered, might lose some petals to the coming storm. But its roots were deep now, planted firm. It would survive and grow stronger for the testing. Just like her. Just like them. Theodore Blackwood had meant to destroy her with the past. Instead, he'd only proved that the future, Her future with John and Samuel was worth fighting for. And fight she would, with every breath in her body. Because Samuel was right. She'd promised not to give up easy. And Anna Whitmore, soon to be Carver, kept her promises. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, as if the prairie itself had dressed for the occasion. Anna stood before the cracked mirror in what would be her last morning in this small room, pinning Martha's cameo at her throat with steady hands. Her better dress, freshly pressed, wasn't white. She was too practical and too honest for that. But the soft blue suited her coloring and brought out her eyes. "Anna?" Samuel's voice through the door. "Pa says, are you ready? He's pacing something awful." She opened the door to find Samuel in his Sunday best, hair slicked down though already rebelling in places. His face shone with excitement and something else. Hope, perhaps, or the simple joy of a child who is getting his dearest wish. "How do I look?" she asked him. "Beautiful," he said solemnly. "Like a real mother." Anna knelt and straightened his collar, though it didn't need straightening. "I need you to know something, Samuel. I may not have given birth to you, but from today forward, you'll be as much my son as if I had. Is that all right with you?" He threw his arms around her neck. "I love you, Anna. I mean, can I call you Ma now?" "After the ceremony," she said, blinking back tears. "Let's not shock the Reverend more than necessary." The ride to town was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. John had refused to see her that morning. "Bad luck," he'd said with a smile that made her heart skip. She rode with Samuel in the wagon while John had gone ahead on horseback. The church was fuller than expected. Word had spread, as word always did in small towns. Some faces were curious, some disapproving, but surprisingly, many were kindly. Mrs. Patterson gave her an encouraging nod. Even Mrs. Henderson was there, though her expression suggested she was attending a funeral rather than a wedding. John waited at the altar, and Anna's breath caught at the sight of him. He'd trimmed his hair and beard, wore his best suit, the one he'd probably last worn for Martha's funeral. But his eyes, when they found hers, held no ghosts, only warmth and certainty, and a love that made her knees weak. The ceremony was simple. Reverend Thompson, whatever his private thoughts, performed his duty with dignity. When he asked if anyone objected, the church held its breath, but Theodore Blackwood was nowhere to be seen. Sheriff Morrison had made sure of that, escorting him to the town limits with a firm suggestion not to return. "Do you, John, take this woman?" "I do." No hesitation, his voice strong and clear. "Do you, Anna, take this man?" "I do." The words she'd thought she'd say to James Sullivan, now given to the right man, at the right time, for all the right reasons. "I now pronounce you man and wife." John's kiss was gentle, appropriate for public viewing, but promising more. Samuel cheered, earning a stern look from Mrs. Henderson and indulgent smiles from others. The reception was held at the ranch. Nothing fancy, just cake and coffee and neighbors who came more out of curiosity than celebration. But slowly, as the afternoon wore on, the atmosphere warmed. Anna moved through it all in a daze of happiness, John's ring solid on her finger, Samuel calling her Ma at every opportunity. "Never seen the boy so happy," one of the ranchers commented to John. "'Bout time he had a mother again." "About time we all had, Anna," John replied, loud enough for others to hear. "Best thing that ever happened to us, wasn't it, son?" "The very best," Samuel agreed, his face smeared with cake frosting. As evening fell and the guests departed, Anna found herself alone with her new family. Her family. The words still felt foreign on her tongue, but sweet as honey. That night, as she moved her few belongings to the main bedroom, their bedroom now, John caught her hand. "No regrets." "None," she said, and meant it. "You?" "Only that it took so long to find you." Their first night as husband and wife was tender, patient, a claiming of hearts as much as bodies. And when Anna woke the next morning in John's arms, sunlight streaming through curtains she'd made herself, she knew she was finally home. The seasons turned, as seasons do. Spring brought new calves and Samuel's growth spurt and the discovery that Anna was expecting. John's joy was so profound it took her breath away. "A baby," he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "Our baby." Summer saw the ranch prospering, the gossip dying down as newer scandals caught the town's attention. Anna's belly rounded, and Samuel appointed himself official protector of his coming sibling. "I'll teach him everything," he promised. "How to ride and fish and find the best worms." "What if it's a girl?" Anna asked. Samuel considered this. "Then I'll teach her too. Girls can do anything boys can do. You taught me that, Ma." Theodore Blackwood's threats came to nothing. The supposed debts proved fraudulent, and word came that he'd been arrested for forgery in Denver. The past, it seemed, had finally released its hold. Fall arrived with its golden light and crisp mornings. Anna, heavy with child now, still managed the household with quiet efficiency. The plant from Martha's garden bloomed in profusion, its sweet scent filling the house. It was a November night when the pains began. John paced like a caged animal while the midwife tended Anna. Samuel banished to the kitchen with strict instructions to keep the fire going. "You did this once before," Anna gasped between contractions. "With Martha." "That was different," John said, gripping her hand. "I wasn't in love with Martha the way I'm in love with you. God help me for saying it, but it's true. I can't lose you, Anna. I can't." "You won't," she promised, then cried out as another pain took her. The baby came with the dawn, a daughter, healthy and loud and perfect. John wept openly as he held her for the first time. "What shall we call her?" Anna asked, exhausted but radiant. "Hope," John said without hesitation. "Because that's what you brought back to us. Hope." Samuel, allowed in at last, approached cautiously. "She's awful small," he observed. "Are you sure she's finished cooking?" Despite everything, Anna laughed. "Yes, sweetheart. She's perfect just as she is. Want to hold your sister?" As Samuel carefully cradled the baby, his face glowing with pride and responsibility, Anna looked around the room. This same room where she'd first arrived as a desperate woman with nowhere to go. Now it held her husband, her son, her daughter, her family. "Penny for your thoughts," John murmured, settling beside her on the bed. "I was thinking about that day at the station, how I begged God for a sign, for hope, for anything, and he sent me you." "Funny," John said, kissing her temple. "I was thinking the same thing." A year later, Anna stood in her garden, Hope balanced on her hip, watching Samuel help John with the evening chores. The prairie stretched endlessly before them, golden in the sunset. The house behind them rang with laughter more often than silence now. Women from town sought her advice, the same women who'd once whispered behind their hands. "How do you manage it all?" they asked. "The house, the children, the ranch accounts you helped John with." "One day at a time," Anna always answered. "With love and patience and the understanding that perfection isn't the goal. Happiness is." She'd learned so much in her journey from that train platform to this moment, that love could grow from kindness, that families were made by choice as much as blood, that sometimes the greatest blessings came disguised as the deepest disasters. "Ma, Pa says come quick. Buttercup had her full." Anna smiled, shifting Hope to her other hip as she headed for the barn. Her daughter gurgled happily, already trying to grab at everything in reach. Another strong-willed female for the Carver Ranch. Martha would have been proud. Inside the barn, the miracle of new life played out once again. The foal, still wet and wobbly, tried to stand on legs like stilts. Samuel watched with shining eyes, John's hand proud on his shoulder. "She's beautiful," Anna breathed. "Like her mistress," John said, drawing Anna against his side. They stood together, their little family complete, watching life begin again. Outside, night was falling over the prairie, stars beginning to emerge like scattered diamonds. Soon they'd go in for supper, for baths and bedtime stories and all the precious routines of family life. But for now, they simply stood together, grateful for the journey that had brought them here. Anna thought of that desperate woman at the station, begging for a bed, for hope, for a chance. She'd found so much more than she'd dared dream. "Thank you," she whispered, to John, to God, to the vast prairie itself. "For what?" John asked. "For not giving up on me, for seeing past the circumstances to the woman underneath, for this life we've built." John turned her to face him, careful of the baby between them. "Anna Carver, You saved us as much as we saved you. Don't ever forget that." As if in agreement, Hope laughed. A bright, bubbling sound that seemed to encompass all the joy in the world. And in that moment, in a barn in Wyoming Territory, with hay in her hair and love in her heart, Anna knew she was exactly where she belonged. The woman who'd begged for a bed had found a home. The heart that had given up on love had learned to trust again. And the family that had been broken by loss had been healed by hope. It wasn't the ending she'd imagined when she'd stepped on that westbound train. It was better. It was real. It was theirs. And it was just the beginning. Thank you for listening to our story from the Wild West. If you're enjoying these tales of love and survival on the frontier, we'd love to hear from you. Please comment below and let us know where you're listening from, whether it's during your commute, at home, or perhaps even somewhere out on the prairie. Don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel for more authentic stories of courage, romance, and the pioneering spirit. Share your thoughts about Anna and John's journey. Did their love story touch your heart as much as it touched ours? We'd love to hear your perspective.